Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It is going well today. I got a little, as I said earlier, I got a little pain in my neck.
Um,
Um, it's kind of a chronic thing because of the drawing work that I do. Like my neck is always like this, and I have to be careful of it. And I've been pushing it a little bit lately, so I'm going to try to sit like this. How are
I
you doing?
did not know that. I did not know that you had to bend over. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know that that was a thing for you. Is there a way that you can like set up your screen where it's kind of like not laying flat on the desk or counter?
I could. I don't like it. I like to bend my head down like that, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So, things change, and and it's important for me to either accept and adapt or pretend and be
Oh
in
yeah.
denial.
Oh
So
yeah.
I got to wake up to this is going to get worse unless I accept and adapt.
Now I have another question. So, do you have any like risk issues? Like
I don't. I
you
really
don't?
don't. I've been doing yoga daily for the past now it'll be 10 years in June, and I just imagine if I hadn't been doing that, you know, things would probably be worse. So I'm thankful for that gift that of yoga and also that I've given it to myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
But no, I don't have any wrist stuff.
Nice. And
Yeah.
I imagine
I
it's
do have
raining.
arthritis though. I have
Um,
arthritis.
you have arthritis, but no carpal tunnel. I guess
Nope.
that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand why, but yeah, it, it's in the like this knuckle and my thumb and here some no, mostly in the thumb, but no carpal tunnel. And as long as I drink a lot of water and don't, like anyway, um, we're going to do Matt's list of bodily complaints.
Well, the reason why I asked, we spent 2 whole weeks talking about my birthday at the beginning of the Cross-Eyed Crucible. So it's like, okay, this week is going to be Matt's time.
Okay, hold on. I didn't start the timer till just now, so we're going to go a
Okay,
little bit long. Is that okay?
it's fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's talk about me.
Yeah, it's all about Matt.
Enough about me. What about you? What do you think about me?
Um, well, I think you're pretty lucky right now that you're there with all the snow, the fresh
Yeah.
snow there in Michigan, and we're getting rain here in Oakland. It's a nice gray day today in Oakland,
Mm-hmm.
which makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we didn't talk about this, but I lived on the Bay for 4 years with my
Hmm.
son. And that Bay Area weather was my weather. Now, until I heard
Mm.
that you had 105 degrees in the Bay uh, last summer and fall. But when I was there, yeah, it was always like, livable weather. Because in Michigan, everybody thinks it's a northern state and it's cold in the summer. The humidity is unreal. It's like it's higher than rainforest humidity.
Mm.
And it's hot. And for us, 90 degrees is hot and humid and ugh. Okay. So I've complained about my bodily aches and the weather. I'm checking up all the old man stuff here.
Yeah. I will just say one thing about Michigan. It was quite nice when I was able to come up there, and one of the things that I did miss when I was able to visit was the humidity. I
Mhm.
think the 2 or 3 days I was there, we got that breeze,
Yep.
and the weather was like, and I think it dropped down to the 60s,
It was
and it
delightful.
was perfect. It
You
was
need to come back.
delightful. It was like being in the Bay Area.
You got
It
to
was
come
pretty
back.
amazing. And the thing was, people around me were saying, "Oh, this is bizarre. This is weird." People were thanking me for
Yeah,
coming to visit.
bring it back.
So,
I'll say one thing about Bay Area weather too. I remember driving out of over the hills and behind us, passing Sacramento. When I moved there, we drove from Michigan to San Francisco. It had been crushingly hot. It was
mhm,
like 100 and I don't know, but it was. And we came up over the last Oakland hill,
mhm,
and we're looking down into the bay, and the weather changed like that.
that,
It must have dropped like 20 degrees going
yeah,
up over this hill.
mhm,
And
mhm,
there was no humidity, or well, there wasn't any. It was just not, like I said, crushingly hot. It was just
right.
beautiful. So yeah, I like those gray days in Oakland. I
Yeah,
miss.
yeah, and for the people who are watching out there, that is actually called a microclimate. So we experience microclimates here in the Bay Area where you could be in the actual bay and it's like, I don't know, like 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the inland areas, the valleys, the Sacramento Valley, the San Joaquin Valley. And then also too, between the two cities, Oakland and San Francisco, you have
Yes.
usually a 10-degree difference.
Yeah, especially with the fog coming in off of the ocean on western San Francisco.
Yes.
I had a friend who lived over there, and it would be cold over
Yeah.
there in the summer. Like, what did
Mhm.
Mark Twain say? The coldest winter I ever experienced was summer in San Francisco.
Right.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
was, and it'd be hot in Alameda where we lived
Hmm.
on the bay.
Hmm.
So it's a weird place.
It is.
It's exciting. You know, it's like living in a national park too. For me, I remember, you talk about going for hikes. Um, Driving over the bridge into San Francisco and looking down and seeing a porpoise,
Hmm.
swimming under the bridge. And I'm like, I'm a New England boy. I just was like, wow, dolphins, cool. Um, and Muir Woods and Marin County and all of that, it was an exciting time to live there. So good on you. I'm glad you're having a gray Oakland day.
Yeah. Thank you. Are you ready to cross into the cross-eyed crucible?
I am.
Okay. Because I have a question for you once we cross over, and it has to do with weather, the setting, and then how it also applies to feeding the story
Yeah.
too. So, okay. So community, let's just go ahead and cross over into the crucible. We're going to go ahead and invite in our ancestors, benevolent beings, those who are guiding us in this journey. And so, taking a moment, dear ancestors, thank you for being with us. We call on you today as we enter into the cross-eyed crucible. It's Brother Matt and I here. We're stewing together here in this space. The prayer is that we ask that our tongues and that our intentions and that our actions are guided by what only is not best for us in the crucible, but best for our community who is watching. Please watch over us with the grace and understanding that we're human. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, but we are very, very, very much humans, and that we are prone to making mistakes. Be with us on this journey. Show us opportunities to open up our hearts. And we put that faith in this process that whatever we do here will be a good thing. And I step over into the crucible, Brother Kevin, and I pass it to Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So yeah, I'm standing at the threshold. They say, thank you, ancestors, for being with me. I can see grandmother, my mother, my uncle, a grandfather, a great grandfather, and also spirit friends, the deities, the benevolent ones, non-blood spirit relations. Thank you for being with me. Help me to be real with the reality, and kind and gentle and courageous. Thank you for this crucible you've helped us build. It's your crucible, ancestors. Thank you for letting me enter. And I cross the threshold and invite others in behind me. And we want to emphasize too benevolence.
Mm.
Benevolence. This is all good intention, kindness. And this is Matt from Michigan, the Blue Hand State, and I'm in the crucible.
Thanks so much for just offering those words in the middle of your invocation. I looked up at you to see, just to see the level of sincerity and intensity, and it just makes me know that I'm in a real place, having this real experience. Because oftentimes, sometimes it feels like that this is healing and cathartic, but like how, like, is this a real thing? And sometimes I have to open up my eyes and just look around and just say, yes, this is really happening. Healing is taking place. We're actually together doing this good work.
Yeah.
So I am appreciative of that. And So the question that I had is, I know that it's snowing over there, it's chilly, and then it's gray over here, it's raining, and I know that this weather has an impact on me in terms of story. I'm wondering, does the snow have an impact on you in terms of connecting the story, relating the story, wanting to hear a story?
Yeah, one of the things that really resonated with me when I first started getting interested in story, well, I've been interested in story since I was a kid, but like we've talked about the mythopoetic men's movement.
Mhm.
I was in my late 20s and starting to hear Robert Bly and James Hillman and Michael Mead and all of these great poets, Etheridge Knight and Malidoma Somé and all of these guys. And one I just started to hear more from, Haki Matabute. Uh, and I could go on, but was that in many cultures, storytelling happened during the winter. Story making happened during the summer. So if you're a hunter community, yeah, that's when the stories, you don't have time to sit around and tell stories maybe at the end of the day, but you're probably pretty
Mhm.
tired and you're going to hit the sack because you got to get up early and go hunt some more the next day. And so the winter was when the stories were woven, put together, gathered, and told. So that does come up for me. Thank you for mentioning that. I didn't really think about it, but I'm a northern climate guy.
Mhm.
I grew up with the Algonquin Indians,
Mhm.
that tribe, the Massachusetts. It's not just the name of a state, it was the name of a people. Um, that's probably, I make up that that's how they made their stories. They did that. They lived an active life during the summer and were just too damn tired to, or maybe they recognize the wisdom of, okay, the stories happen during the summer and then we weave
Mhm.
them and tell them during the winter.
Mhm.
So that's what
Mhm.
comes up for me with that question.
Mhm. Mhm.
Does the grayness of the day affect you in Oakland and your appreciation of story and design?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I connected directly to the gray weather, although the gray weather does have a certain impact, right? When I'm listening to story, because it generates this coziness within me. It makes me want to connect not only to other people, but to other people's stories. And over the last few years, winter has become a thing for me where I have literally um, invited in grief. So I'm connecting winter to grief and the letting go of the dying, the inviting in of the dying process. And so each winter, as it gets gray outside, is a reminder that there are some things within me that needs to purify, and the grayness um, creates a sense of happiness within me because I know that I'm no longer scared of the darkness, of the shadow side of the places within me that needs to be purified. And so the grayness is actually an invitation for me to do this work. And I gravitate to stories and to wisdom where people have done this, who have come before me, generations and generations, and they have done this work. And so I am actually inviting those stories to help me with the removal of the things that are no longer serving me. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We are the place we live in. That's just what comes up for me. And the weather is the place. So yes, if I move someplace else from the Northeast to the desert, and I try to pretend like I'm not going to change just because I'm in a different place, it's really silly. It makes for different, we were talking about this earlier. I brought this up earlier. It makes for different people. So it's good to mention the weather because it will have an effect on how I express myself, what I'm feeling.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it's a good thing.
And also, too, I wanted to mention too that in the past, I think there's a fear of gray weather. I think there's a fear of the dampness. I think there's a fear of the rain because it does signify a death or a cleansing. In Californians, we don't take too kindly to rain, although we need plenty of it. And so in places where it snows, and I'm just thinking about the last time we were physically together before the pandemic, we were actually in the snowy riverbanks of Wisconsin,
Yeah.
where we were able to do deep ritual and healing work. And when I'm in those areas, the confrontation of death is so pronounced, more pronounced than here. I think here there's a certain kind of negligence, and what I mean negligence is that people, we want to live forever. We kind of overlook this death and dying. It's all about maximizing pleasure. But in the Midwest, the ending of a season, the dying of things is so pronounced.
Yeah.
I feel like it really made me face some of my things like directly and head on. So I wanted to just add that part.
Yeah. And so thank you for bringing that in. It's okay. The degree to which I can't grieve means the degree to which I can't feel joy.
Right.
During the winter, I've heard this to a poet say that, during the winter here, the trees are barren on top. They appear to be barren on top, and they're blossoming underground. The dreams of the spring and the summer and the autumn are being woven underground. It's a good, interesting way to think about it. If I can't grieve, I shouldn't expect myself to be able to feel anything else.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so it's not bad during the winter when it's, here or on a gray day, wherever we are, whatever, when it shows up, like Rumi said, invite it in, make it a guest. It's okay. It's just feelings. It's okay to have feelings.
I've heard somewhere actually that our degree to love directly balances with our degree to actually grieve loss. And so I don't know how true that is, but that does tend to have some resonance with me in my own heart. I have a question for you in terms of how are you sitting with the story these days? There's a lot of grief for me that is arising in this story, particularly in the second part. As now we understand that Himsika is going through this change of transitioning into something that maybe he doesn't want to become, but has to somehow work out this rejection that maybe he's feeling from his teacher. Are you gathering that this is rejection that he's feeling? I mean, what's coming up for you?
Well, a couple of things. One of them is I'm still stuck on the part that the father in the first part where the father has said, hey, this is going to be difficult. How about we kill my son? Would that be a good idea? And recognizing how many times that happened in my life as a child by adults and how many times I did it as an adult to my children or to children not of my blood, but, and it's just abandoning, and also moving forward into the story and recognizing I can't fix all of that. I wish that I could just cry for like 15 minutes and I'd be done with that, but it's probably going to take a few more cries. So I can leave that, it'll come back. Right now, what came to me was in listening to, I was paying particular attention to the way the student and the teacher related. And when I started to teach, my mentor, whose name is Glenn Michaels, had told me, Matt, when you teach, remember this, if there isn't a wall between the student and the teacher needs to build one. And I didn't really understand what he meant until I started to get into the teaching and seeing how tempting it is to create personal relationships, which may seem like in the interim, like, oh, this is a good thing. Let's go out and have lunch. Let's have a drink. No, there has to be objectivity between the mentor and the student. And when I heard that Ahimsaka was living with his teacher, and I had to write the names down. I forget people's names.
Dispamak?
Yeah, Dispamak. That's right. Acharya Dispamak. That he'd moved into his house with him and that he was having pleasant conversations with his wife, right away the flashing lights went off. You know, like,
Same.
yeah, that's not gonna.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did again with listening again. One other thing I want to say too is that I'm recognizing too that for me, uh, I there's lots of different ways, things to hang on the hooks in this story. For me, a lot of them are they're personal, they're interpersonal. But I recognize too that anybody who comes here, there's a lot of stuff going on, both personally and in community and national community. Any of those things can be hung on these hooks. And so I want to acknowledge that and encourage people. Bring what, story is there. That story embraces everybody's stuff. Nothing is denied. And so I just want to encourage that.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
No, you were going to say something else. Go ahead.
Well, we did bring up white racism at the end last week. And that's something that I'm more and more waking up to. It would be a denial for me to say I didn't know about it or I didn't actually do anything about it. No, I've been awake to it, but I'm waking up more.
Absolutely.
And recognizing that it is the ultimate of a kind of trance that I believe this story is talking about for ahimsaka, a trance of being in a system and not paying attention to the the stuff that's going on, the real stuff. And so the trance that our nation says racism is the problem, when in fact it's white racism, is I can hang that as on one of the hooks from the story.
Right. And that's quite interesting, as the story doesn't talk explicitly about race and class and all these things. And yet there's so much room for us to again, project onto these emotional hooks. For me, this is like raging for me, as I'm dealing with homophobia, transphobia, racism. I'm talking about in my professional life and spiritual life. I'm in part of spiritual communities where this conversation is dominating the table. And then I go into my work life and this conversation is like dominating the table. And oftentimes I have to be this agent, right, of change, even though I don't want to be this agent of change. And so as I see Ahimsaka, like he's moving through this system that was given to him. I mean, without a doubt, he had all these privileges handed to him. He's going to be taught in this Brahmic tradition. And if he goes and if he moves through the system and he plays by the game, at the end, he will get something, at the end. And what it is a level of prestige, maybe material wealth. Maybe he has this pick of the partner that he gets to be with in the end and procreate and then continue the line of wealth. And so on one hand, I so feel for him, because he's moving through this. He seems like a one-dimensional character in the story. He's suffering this rejection from his father and his teacher. But then on the other side, I'm like, well, where is his critical thinking? Where's his critical thinking skills? And even though he's good, he's good in terms of being a good, developing into a good Brahmin. Where is his sense of where's his sense of humanity where it applies to just being a human being? And so so now it's interesting, as we're feeding this story, I don't no longer see his inherent goodness. I just see a young man who's compliant, and the system ultimately fails him. And now he's at the preface of making this transition into something less savory because his privileges won't be handed to him. And so that's where I'm at with the story. It's heavy. It's heavy. I never said that this was an easy story. And I never said that as a Black man. I don't have my own baggage that I'm bringing to this, which sometimes have tinges of resentment, that's built in there, because I see offhand what doesn't work, in terms of privilege. I see the dullness in the thinking, which is very prevalent in this story. And many of you can say, well, it's just a story, this is just a moral, spiritual story. But I also have to pay attention to who's writing these stories, who's telling these stories, who um, and the energy that took for this story to be preserved, and understanding that this story has survived, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So I'll rest the talking piece there.
Yeah. Okay. So you're yeah. Gobsmacked. That doesn't really cover it. I'm feeling a lot of stuff, and first I need to say, can we add 5 minutes to the talk today?
Yes, let's go ahead.
All right.
And we can break this thing down. We can break this talk down into mini
Yeah.
mini talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe we can even break this in half if we go
Yeah.
longer than
Yeah.
that. So anyway, first thing is, when I speak to you, I see a person who is sensitive and all the things that you bring to the screen. And we have not actually spent a lot of time face to face.
Right.
And what I forget, though, is, and if I had spent more time with you, I might have it become more indelled in me that the work that you do is actually similar to paying attention in a story, tracking a story, in working to find bridges, develop bridges. And that's, in short, that's what I'm saying. What it sounds to me like the job that you do. You have to bring a lot of this stuff that is brought to paying attention to a story, noticing the nuance, being okay with your own feelings, not taking on other people's feelings, right? And that the word codependency comes up.
That's
so,
right.
That's one of the things, like I bring up, for me too, in the story, I keep seeing the system that is encouraging the good boy, Ahimsaka, to make more masks, to be okay in the stresses of the system. Because the system has already said, sorry, if you show any signs of aggression, trouble.
Right.
Whether his dad told him, I thought about killing you once when you were a baby, or not, that stuff is still in the air, right? And so it doesn't surprise me that at some point he snaps. Come on. They're denying his internal, whatever you want to call it, juice, for God's sakes. The aggression that's in a man is not negative by definition. It can be, certainly, when a person has been in denial of their stuff and making masks and being really good at it and very successful at that. And then finally, that mask making doesn't work. And if they're put in a really difficult spot, they could regress into, I'm going to do whatever I feel like doing, including cutting a lot of fingers off of people's hands, right? Metaphorically, actually. And so I actually feel like Ahimsaka becoming Angulimala, there is a person that's in between those two. It is a balance of the do no harm and I'm gonna kick some ass on a daily basis because life has been sucky for my whole life. Nobody cares about me. They care about this pretty picture they want me to be. So that's what's coming up for me. And I pass.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing those aspects and points out of the story. And, as I'm sitting here and I'm pondering, like, should I, what's on the table? What can I bring up? What can I put on the altar? I'm thinking about Black men, Black bodies, Black men, the uptick of violence that happens between Black men, the killing, the maiming, of one another, just the aggression and the anger, and then also too the lost hope, the lost dreams, being born innocent, but because of a constellation, which is white systemic racism, a fate is already determined, for a black life, for a black body. What would make a young black man, use a weapon of destruction and turn it against himself and against others, right? This comes from a deep longing and a deep pain to be oneself. But because of this constellation, the fate is already determined that this person will be nothing in life, unless he's serving white systemic racism, in these very insidious and complicit ways. This is what's coming up for me. And then there's a lot of grief, when I'm sitting with this. Um, and also what I'm sitting with is the preservation of toxic masculinity. And so the father wanted to protect his stage in the king's court, right? And you have this teacher now who wants to protect his image, and his reputation, and and who, and what is lost because of that. This young man is doomed. He's neglected, he's rejected, because you have these two men who want to, protect their power and their authority. um, and I think that's devastating. And at the same time, this is not to take away the autonomy and the agency of this young kid. He still has to make a choice and all of that. And so I think for me, being a black man, I think the difficulty for me is sitting with, yes, the constellations, said this, about me and foretold this, and to add on to it, being queer and cross-eyed, adds a whole other layer to this. The constellations, the writing is on the wall, but I still have a choice in all of this. And so I'm wondering, well, is my role, or is my job in this life, is it okay for it to be that more difficult, than the next man? As I'm looking at my white counterpart, I'm like, wow, I'm overcoming, a lot. Is this fair? Is this righteous? Is this just? It's just things that I sit with on a daily basis. So I just wanted to share that and put that in the cross-eyed crucible.
Yeah. One of the things I have to acknowledge too, um, there's a lot of stuff, but just in terms of the story does, I'm having this issues with white racism, and the story does actually support my recovery through that. I can see how I can hang stuff about that on this. And one of the things that I have to understand is that there's a lot of assumptions that I make. And rather than pay attention to the assumptions, which can be based upon all sorts of things, really looking both within and without to see what is actually happening compared to the mask that I'm wearing and the mask that others may be wearing, and to just acknowledge too that it's okay to wear masks. I developed that thing because somebody taught me how to do it when I was a kid. I developed it as a way to survive. And the masks are becoming conscripting and dangerous. So with that said, in my awakeness to the system of white racism and supremacy, I have to recognize for me, and I'm seeing in the story, that as I deconstruct the system in me, what do I hold on to?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who am I? Right? And then, of course, as a codependent, I'm going to try to reach out and blame it on somebody else. So I see that teacher doing that when he starts to hear this stuff about maybe Ahimska's having a relationship with his student, with his wife. I
His
mean,
wife.
right? So he's gonna first he gets angry at the other students and says, "Shut up," and then he's like, "Well, wait a minute. Where there's smoke, there's fire." So then, rather than look within and see why that triggered him, and if it has any real validity,
Right.
he decided to point it outwards and see where everybody else was wrong. So I can do that too as a white racist in recovery. I can say, okay, how am I gonna fix Kevin in all of his blackness and all of the pain? Or all of, it's like, first of all, you're not, like we said before, you're not a representative of the black people on the planet. You're Kevin. Now you have issues based upon white racism in this country as a person with skin darker than mine. I have privilege because of that, right? Can I deal from that, not from the easiest, most accessible old assumption that just feels comfortable? Because it's scary to deal with the variables that could change from time to time. We're getting close to being on the top of another 5 minutes. I'm okay with going another 5. And
yeah,
you said we could split this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have something to say.
Every 5 minutes, I'll just say we're at 5 minutes.
Got it.
All right.
And then I have to say that there's a lot of activity that's happening in my house. And we have just press that is happening here because someone special in my house, and I'm not going to mention any names, have just completed an amazing project called Creatives in Place. Anyway, there's a little plug for a website that is featuring Bay Area artists dealing in the pandemic.
.org?
Oh, good question. I'll plaster it. I'll figure it out, and then I'll plaster it at the bottom of the screen.
Good.
I'm thankful for editing. Yeah. So there's a lot of activity going on in the house. So I'll just mention that beforehand. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that, although I am a Black man living a Black experience in the United States, that is just one frame or perspective that I'm working from. I'm also a lay Buddhist teacher, right? So I also have that practice. And so for what I know is that, yes, this is a question for my racial identity. Like, yeah, how much burden do I have to take on that is, unfair and unjust? But from a Buddhist point of view, this is a great opportunity to purify and to deeply see into one's suffering. And so one of the beauties and the joys of the Black experience is that I have a really good understanding of my suffering, and I have a really good understanding of the systems that are impacting my suffering. And now that I have this practice, I have really good practice tools that allows me to become aware of how these experiences are impacting my body and my habit, my karma, in essence. And so I'm intensely grateful for that practice. And so I don't suffer as much, right? And so that's one of the things I want my audience to know. So I'm bringing these up as hooks, as hooks, that the things that are hooking me in the story, for two reasons. One, because I am a Buddhist lay teacher, doesn't mean that I still don't get caught up on these hooks, because it's an everyday lived experience of mine. But the second part of the reason why I'm sharing this is because there's power in the vulnerability of being able to have these conversations with like-minded people who can actually hold you in this dialogue and conversations. And, to be honest, I don't know if Matt and I are that strong to hold one another in these conversations, but there is some magic about being in a cross-eyed crucible, or just in any crucible, where we have the spirit of the ancestors who can hold us in this dialogue. And so Matt and I, what we understand in our own recovery, because we're both in recovery. He calls himself a recovering racist. I call myself a recovering addict of all sorts. But one of the things that we do have an understanding is that this racism thing is much bigger, and the solution is much bigger than either one of us. And so part of this is like surrendering to what is, and then also like teasing out what is happening for us, and naming and pointing. And sometimes we don't have answers to these problems, but what we're wrestling with is a universal phenomenon that is both impacting white and Black people, maybe in different ways, but we're both impacted by this in our past.
Yeah. One of the things that comes up to me in what you shared and then in the story too is that the issue of as an addict, I recognize that there are aspects of addiction that, even though it's painful, there are biochemical things that this may see. I think I'm still on track here, but I recognize I'm going into my, trying to figure out addiction, because of my addictive cycle of anxiety. That is part of what I thought of was the norm when I was a kid. So it became a part of my physical, right down to my, the atomical structure of me, that anxiety is the norm. Okay. And so even though I'm working in recovery and recognizing that, and I'm saying, okay, I need to keep handing over my investment in anxiety, I do notice too that I keep on investing in anxiety. The thing, I have some issues with pain right now. It makes me anxious, right? Last week, I had some issues about people, like a family member who was in pain. It does seem to, like, I keep on looking for reasons to be anxious. Okay. And so when you were talking about suffering, I had to recognize too that it does seem to me too that I keep looking for new ways for me to be suffering. And seeing that that's a good thing as part of my way of being in the world. What is it like if I'm loved entirely all the time? No matter what I've done, what I am doing, or what I will do. That blows my mind when I heard that coming into 12-step. Over and over again, it said, Matt, what if you, in so many words, after I described the problem, and what's put back to me is, what if you knew you were just loved all the time? You are never abandoned, never. You always, like we say, the 10 can I see the 10,000 ancestors behind you? And when I say ancestors, it's not just people who are family members. I'm talking about spiritual. All of this, all the ones I resonate. Mother Teresa, well, she was a person. Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, Tecumseh, Alexander the Great, although not the nicest guy, Jesus, the Buddha, on and on and on. They're back there and they're saying, we love you. But from my conditioning, that is as unsettling as serenity is, as unsettling as when I'm caught up in an addictive behavior. And so that's what I'm seeing with this story, is going from one process of not being present to another. Present.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Okay, that mask didn't work. I learned from I'll finish by saying, I heard this once too, is that what is really interesting about developing spiritual awareness is that it's tricky, powerful, cunning, and baffling. That old operating system is going to take the new spiritual understanding and turn it into another piece of armor to put over the heart. I just worked to open myself up and allow myself to be vulnerable and open my heart. And I get this new method, and I'll even turn that in a way to close myself down. You get what I'm saying with that? That blew me away. That's how confusing this is. And so the simplicity of simply being present is a necessity of medication for me on a daily basis. And I don't practice it enough. I've done a lot of talking there. So
Yeah, I love it. I love it. What do we have cooking in the background? The leftovers.
We've got Chris made a delightful. Yeah, there's Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey.
You actually just said hello to the blogosphere too.
We can always use some Chris energy for sure.
Bring it in. Bring it in. I see the T-shirt too. It's like feed the people. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Love you,
Another
Kevin.
time. Yeah. And we'll talk about that too later. The feed the people T-shirt.
Nice.
So we're cooking up. Chris is warming up some delicious soup she made.
Beautiful.
Oh, you're fine. I'm telling Chris she's fine. She's
no. Yeah, perfect. It's actually perfect. And maybe we can do maybe you can tell me a little bit more about the T-shirt and
feed the people.
Yeah, feed the people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also, too, I wanted to just put out there. I want to talk about love and how love is expressing itself in this story, or how it's not expressing itself in the story at this point, all the way up until this point. And I know that it will take another half an hour to have this dialogue. So maybe we can wrap this up and then we can pick this up.
Good.
Is that a good place to start next time?
You know what? I don't. Okay, I'll just say we'll probably have this discussion afterwards. I don't want to cut this in half. This is going to be a long one, and we hope you stuck around. But I think it's important for this one to be heard all together. I really have been helpful.
Look, I always have a time issue with Matt. Everybody. So this is just for the blogosphere. If I say 25 minutes, we're going to have 35 minutes. This happens in our men's group. This happens. It doesn't matter. Matt is going to tackle on another 10 minutes. And I think it's his color people time tracking that comes through. You know what they say with us Black people, that we always arrive 10 minutes. Well, you're not late. You're pretty prompt. But you like to tease that thing out.
All right. I gotta say though, there are times when I am on top of the time, just so everyone know this. And my being late is about me enjoying whoever I'm with, regardless of skin tone.
And so that's a compliment.
Absolutely. Yeah. To us all the people who are going to participate in this too, but I love the conversation with Kevin. It feeds me. I've been using the word manna from the Bible for a while now. This is manna to me. As much as food is that I eat on a daily basis, this is nourishing. And I'll push it. I'll try to get more time. So we're going to walk out?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay.
I'm here.
Grandmothers and grandfathers, all our spirit friends, all the benevolent ones who know us better than we know ourselves. Thank you. Let's just keep it simple. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to the roots in which the summer of me is blossoming, while the winter of me feels the chill. And that's all okay. Things will change. And you, ancestors, the one thing that doesn't change is you. Always there. Always with a warm hand on my back. Always reminding me that I am loved yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'm grateful for my brother Kevin being here with us and with me and my ancestors and his ancestors too. And all of you who attended and all of you who, whether you contribute or not, thank you, and your ancestors too. I encourage us all to go out and feel the love that's always there for us and move from that place. Move from that experience of love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I crossed the threshold, and this is Matt from Michigan, the Blue Hand State, and I'm across the threshold.
Ooh, Matt, thank you so much for that beautiful prayer of protection. And as I'm holding the ashes in the crucible, may those people in our audience, whoever you are, may you be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May you know true love. May you experience good health. May you be COVID free. And if you are impacted by COVID, may the recovery be swift, and may you know happiness. Thank you so much for being with us. And for me, thank you, ancestors, for journeying with us in the Cross-eyed Crucible, for watching over Matt and us, for loving us, guiding us, protecting us. And thank you to the Love Dogs for all the work that you're doing in that crucible, that Saturday morning crucible. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy work, and you're doing it. I love you so much. And this is Kevin, the Cross-eyed, and I'm crossing over the threshold.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's go out dancing, all right?
Only if you dance.
Yeah, okay. I'll dance this time. All right, fine. I got to get back on here again.
Now there's some distortion in the sound. Can
when
we
the music was playing, it could be
Yeah.
maybe I was playing it pretty loud. Maybe maybe it was resonating. I need to get it back on here. Sorry about that. There we go. Outside Crucible. There we go. And trying to find there it is, theme song. Go.